Hello and welcome to the latest Business of the Business podcast. I'm your co-host, JP John Paz for the Two-Man Power Trip. Joining me is my co-host, the financial wrestling genius himself, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. We're sort of in the shadow of a lot of industry leader news from the NXT debut on the CW and the ratings holding up for a couple of weeks to AEW settling down with Warner Discovery finally with some Fox rumors in the wind, but we'll get to that I think in the way that works for us.
So, is there room for another mainstream WWE competitor? Is it Fox? I mean, does a big AEW deal raise all the ships? What do you think about that? What does Freddie Prinze think about that?
So, one of the things that made me think about it a little bit was when Tony Khan said his promotion was, what did he say? Like it was for the weirdos or,
Sickos.
whatever. Sickos. Made me think of that meme with the people, somebody looking in a window or something like that. But so that's not really mainstream. They're getting mainstream money now for sure, which really puts them solidly, although they've been there a while, in the position of number two. Really, as far as we know, in terms of revenue worldwide, obviously there's certain places around the world where they can more consistently draw more fans from potentially New Japan. I'm not sure how they're holding up with their attendance, but certainly in Mexico now. But they're number two. They're on a mainstream network. They're going to be on Max, which exposes them even more, as Brendan Thurston has detailed well. But are they really mainstream? Meaning that for that casual viewer who maybe wants an alternative to WWE or isn't tired of it but wants something different, would AEW appeal? I'm not so sure right now. There's certainly names from the WWE past of Moxley and Bryan Danielson and so on. But really, in terms of viability, we hear that AEW is talking to Fox, and we've also heard that Fox is Pluto, right? Fox is what's Fox's streaming platform?
Tubi.
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 Had been interested in pro wrestling. Now, I don't know if the one hand talks to another in such a big corporation, but it shows interest in wrestling. And from the Fox network side, I just can't imagine, excuse me, AEW airing on such a platform. But if Fox is interested, maybe and there was interest from the Tubi side in terms of starting something out, maybe that's something to work from. I don't know if now is the ideal time because you don't really have so many big name free agents, on the market. One of the names, of course, I was thinking about was Goldberg, but I don't know if he signed with WWE. But it seems like something is cooking there. Ronda Rousey is, managing her, growing her family. I mean, in between pregnancies and so on. I don't know if she's looking to return or just focus on, something like that. But in terms of creating a mainstream product, you could have something like Fox having shows, not even necessarily weekly for an hour, but even, once a month, something like that, specials on Saturday night or Friday night when there's not football commitments, and then have Tubi from a weekly perspective in terms of keeping things going. I was thinking about this especially with the Fox part, that even looking at AEW now, right? They're going to Iowa. It's a 9,000 person venue, and they're 16 days out as of this recording. And WrestleTix has it that they've moved 700 seats, 750 seats. So it's not easy. What I would say to do would be to spend money, go to a college town, drum up some excitement for people on the campus that will come in for free sodas and hot dogs and whatever it may be, and sort of like treat it like a studio taping to create excitement there, and maybe have wrestlers that don't want a full-time schedule that are names, whatever it may be, and celebrities and all that sort of thing, and make that sort of like have a big time feel, sort of like a Saturday night's main event type of experience back in the day. We'll see what the new one looks like too. But in terms of on a smaller level, Freddie Prinze Jr. recently commented, who's, constantly talking about his promotion, which hasn't gotten off the ground. The big dogs are all going to have their new homes. I think there's room for some of the smaller ones to come up, not just TNA, but the MLWs and the GCWs. I think there's room for them to find a spot on TV, and I know there are networks interested in their product. Is there a network interested in GCW's product? I don't know. We've spoken to Brett Lauderdale, who's talked about how being on television could be detrimental to them. But I think, from a special perspective, or in the right mix, the right formula, certainly you'd have more platforms, to grow on.
The interesting thing to me, just about AEW fans in general, and it's so funny. It was interviewing somebody who was asking, "Oh, you think they're going to be profitable?" And somebody responded and was like, "You're an idiot for even asking that." I was like, "Wow, these fans are I don't know, never experienced that with some WWE fans. Where they're like, you're an idiot for even asking a question." I was like, "Wow, these fans are really, really weird." And I was just looking at the guy's Twitter. Everything was reposting AEW. AEW is great. So I was like, all right, maybe we're not dealing with a sane, normal person here. But I was just like, man, that's not all encompassing for AEW fans. I was like, man, they really are like sickos. The crazy ones. Like, they really are. You even question if they're going to be profitable. But also, I noticed Meltzer had wrote back too and was like, oh, this is crazy, because the guy had answered that was interviewing that they weren't going to be profitable. So Meltzer was saying that, like, that's a crazy thing, that they will be profitable next year. But who knows? I still don't know. I really maybe have to talk to BTZ about it, Brandon Thurston, to really kind of get into the numbers, or read the Observer, because I heard he has more of the numbers of what the deal is going to be. So I don't know if they're going to be profitable, but I just don't know if there's another league that'll be on TV that can be profitable in that regard too. Just, it's a weird time in wrestling. There's so many popular leagues, but in other venues like GCW, way more popular live attendance and streaming. You know what I mean? Like TV, I don't know if that necessarily would do it for him.
Yeah, I think like with Fox, like you'd have to like go big with it, which would be like a big risk, where you're like, okay, let's negotiate for whomever like the big free agents are that are coming up. Like, meaning like, let's say like Steve Austin, right? He's connected to WWE. Is he under some type of deal? But like, if you offered Steve Austin like $4 million for 2 matches, could you get him? Like that sort of thing. Or like, I mix up the Paul brothers, right? But one of them, obviously, Logan, right? Logan Paul is the one in WWE, right? But like, what if you offered Jake Paul, to do a match? That sort of thing, where it's not like an organic build, and it's not saying like, okay, we are taking the most notable like semi-main event free agents, but you're like almost like not to the sense where you lean on it being a joke, like celebrity boxing or something, but it's almost like, who are the biggest names in pro wrestling? Like, sort of like Glory hired like models, right, to sit in the front row when I went to like the theater at Madison Square Garden. Like, sort of like you're treating it like it's a big time thing. You're doing it at a college field house, and you're having people really being excited on it, and you're like, okay, this is a big thing. This is pro wrestling. The names, it's a big time production, to see if something like that would take off, as opposed to like the wrestling competitors that we know today.
It's just, I don't know. We'll wait and see like who could kind of take off, and what could be like a good TV option, I guess. But what about New Japan? I mean, I know obviously they're on Access TV, but what's going on as far as them actually coming to the States and doing big shows in the States?
Yeah, I think the window is sort of closing, I think, for doing big live event business. For years, like a post WCW thing and post ECW thing, like, and ECW of course is only to a certain level, but like being able to do big shows and drawing several thousand people outside of like a one-off show in Staten Island with Little Person Wrestling, you always have little things like that from time to time, like, or some fair where like the stars and the moon aligned, and like you happen to draw people or whatever. But like, in terms of regular business, I think you could see it with AEW where that window is really closing 700 in Iowa and so on. But so just looking at Lowell for Fighting Spirit Unleashed, it's not an open map, but I'm looking here, and the show is November 8th, and in row A, like just one of the sections, there's 2 seats of the 8 sold. And then, another area, row A, there's just 2 seats remaining, but it's still remaining. And then another area, it's more than half the seats remaining in the front row. So I don't like this strategy that we've sort of talked with them about, even that is closing. And we'll see with Long Beach where they've long come. That's an easier comparison point because that's where they've come for a number of years. At the Walter Pyramid, as we're taping this, the recording, the tickets are going to be going on sale. So it's been explosive 2024 for New Japan. This is their PR, of course, including the U.S. from San Jose to Chicago, D.C. to Ontario. There have been memorable moments across the states this year. We'll have plenty more in the last American show of the year. Also notable, of course, is AEW coming over there for the Wrestle Dynasty show, coming over to Japan and working with New Japan, of course, CMLL, and then the Forbidden Door in London. So I think there's more to work with there than we might be seeing for the States. Ultimately, it's like a trade-off, like in terms of sending talent instead of running Japan and all the costs involved, like how much is it worth it? Now they're doing it just to, a small handful of shows here, which makes sense. And this is the strategy that we've guided them in for a number of years, doing these 5 or 6 shows to concentrate on, but it seems to be diminishing returns.
The interesting thing with New Japan Pro Wrestling is I think they're like a little bit in flux as far as star power. You know what I mean? They lose Okada, lose Ospreay, Jay White. So it's an interesting shift, an interesting dynamic for them. I know they'll be working with CMLL and AEW and stuff, but it just seems like a big shift for them.
Yeah, I don't know like the talent enough to, to feel like, especially like the non-Japanese talent, but like sometimes like Ospreay, like his style is like very, he's considered, of course, one of the best in the world. I'm not arguing that, but like a lot of people feel like, okay, it's like too much high spots and that sort of stuff. Like, don't at me if you disagree or whatever. Like, again, like whoever is disagreeing probably watched thousands of hours. I'm just like very peripherally talking about it. But like, I don't know if it's like, sometimes it's good to like switch things up. Like it feels like, okay, if we hold on to this style, like then we'll get the most out of it. But sometimes it's good to switch things up. And again, John, no offense intended, right? But like, let's say Hogan and his wonderful crew from the early 90s, like if he never left the first time, right, like would the business have evolved? So, it's a big comparison to Ospreay to Hogan, but like sometimes you have to like switch it up. So maybe they will find another way. And then, coming back and working with AEW and bringing these talents in certain degrees, like it freshens it up. Like I'm a big, relatively, right, like Zack Sabre Jr. fan. Like his style is different. He looks different. I don't know if his arms are as skinny as they used to be, but to me that was like a positive. It was just different, right? Like he's really good, but he doesn't have to look like everyone else. He doesn't have to wrestle like everyone else. So him getting even more of a spotlight, maybe that'll be a plus too.
So as far as Anthem is concerned, what's the latest going on with them?
So for all the people that accuse me of being like a TNA hater, and I'm just looking at it, at least factually or depending on what it is from my perspective or opinion, it may be hard to argue that from the third brand on, that TNA for its big shows isn't the hottest third promotion in the country right now.
Oh.
It, for a while, and I wasn't trying to diminish it, like Montreal felt like a one-off. The anniversary show in Vegas, to the rebranding to TNA seemed like a one-off, but they're doing it consistently now. Right in the last big show, where was it? San Antonio. And here now Detroit, it looks like most of their floor is gone. It's hard to tell because it's GA, how much of the upper tier, but it looks like another big house, maybe another 2,000 people, depending. So they have that momentum there. I think it'll also be dependent on, with free agents coming up, who they'll be able to retain into the new year. And I think, I'm not sure of Joe Henry's deal and for their women's champion, that sort of thing. Like, those are the faces of the company now, and that's really helped to build their momentum, no matter how much people focus on the brand. But I think they're pointing up now, which hadn't been for a while. Now, of course, and we want to wish well wishes to everyone affected by the hurricane and still being affected by the hurricane. Hopefully that's dissipated by the time you're listening to this. But they had to move to Skyway Studios in Nashville, a venue that they know well, which holds about 150 people or thereabouts, and that sold out quickly there. No one was really worried about a sellout with the inexpensive tickets, but they turned it into a plus there. Now, it seemed like for a while, like, why do you focus on this TNA Plus streaming platform? But with issues with Triller and YouTube and so on, it seemed like they've been smart about it. I'm not sure how much it cost them with Endeavor for the hosting, but having their own thing internally might have been the best move. They offered a deal for the rest of the year, $35 to have access to a number of the resources there. But, and again, a strength of Anthem overall, and TNA is one of its brands, is getting out there so much on these streaming platforms. So there's yet another one that came out now, FLS, which has 100 sports channels, or more than 100 sports channels. So of course, TNA is well represented, as well as like the Fight Network and related platforms there.
So as far as did something change with the structure of the company though, Anthem? Did anything change as far as that?
New changes, not so much. I think that disruption is already done. But somebody whose name we haven't talked about much, Michael Shawchenko, the vice president of digital operations, is actually presenting at a Amazon Web Services event, or he did present in New York. Strategies for customer engagement and monetization in streaming TV. So would have loved to have heard that. Those things tend to be pretty expensive, but just in terms of finally for TNA Talk is just looking at their schedule, like we talked about, Bound for Glory, and then followed by a TNA taping. Then later in November in Fayetteville, Double Shot, Turning Point in Winston-Salem, then Double Shot in Atlanta, of course, in Center Stage for Final Resolution and an Impact taping as well.
Nice, like that. As far as speaking of Atlanta, the old NWA stopping around. What's going on with Billy Corgan and the old NWA?
So people were kind of like dunking on Billy Corgan just because of a headline, which wasn't intended as such. It was sort of like, as long as I'm in charge of NWA, it's going nowhere. And everyone was like, yeah, you're right. That sort of thing. So, I mean, when you have the money, like, he obviously enjoys a certain style of wrestling, or he's aiming at, as we talked about, like, he's aiming for what he considers like mainstream, which is sort of like in a certain mindset, like big guys hitting each other, that sort of thing. Whereas some styles have changed. So he could keep funding this as long as he wants, where, again, we don't know if AEW is profitable. with what NWA is doing. We don't know what their profitability level either. So Billy Corgan said, as many of you know, this was his big announcement, which didn't seem to float outside of the taping until it was shared in the actually on X, right? Because they lost their streaming platform. As many of you know, the NWA is the spiritual home to so many legends. Because this is the oldest wrestling brand in the world, 76 years and counting, 76 years of continuous operation, sort of. I bought this company to bring it back to the top, and we are going to do that because as long as I own the NWA, we aren't going anywhere. We can't be stopped. We are wrestling history. We are wrestling as it's meant to be. If any man wants to come out and try and take the NWA from me, he'll have to do it, or she'll have to do it out of my cold, dead hands. So
Wow.
The NWA continues. So, if it makes him happy, right? As we know from the reality show, and he's married, he has wonderful children, he gets to tour with them. Let him live his life as much as he wants. But as a business, that's when we question it. So NWA has announced that for the next 5 weeks, NWA Power will stream Tuesdays at 6:05. So I think at this point we're a couple weeks into that. So I'm curious, where are they going next? I'm wondering how much lead time they had, because to me, it seemed obvious that, for WWE coming to the related platform or the network, whereas they were the streaming, that it wouldn't last. But maybe it seemed like because one is one thing and one is the other, that maybe they would be able to stay under the radar. But that didn't last. But in terms of positive news, they were in a small school in Queens, and it looked full, sold out. And everyone likes the name Shockwave. To me, when I hear the name Shockwave, it's the old Pride K1 shows, which were amazing.
Yes.
But NWA using it for Forney, Texas, the OC Theater, where they've been before, on Saturday, January 11th. So just looking at sort of some of their shows, because it's a mix of, they have these affiliates now, and they have their own promotion, so we might be missing some. Some of them are so small that it's sort of not necessarily worth reporting on, in this type of venue. But October 18th, NWA Chicago, Super Smashing Halloween, Highland Park. So Billy owns the overall promotion, but also his offshoot promotion, the Sam Hain Show, again on October 26th in Sarasota, Florida. Hopefully not as controversial as last time. NWA Exodus in Cleveland on November 16th. NWA Looks Like Hell, which was a really good success gate-wise last year. And they're returning to Dothan on December 14th. And then the aforementioned Shockwave show into the new year.
So very interesting to mention this Paragon talent agency and what's going on with Black Label Pro, because they had that big show with them, right? I mean, they had all those stars there. They did this whole NFL style combine thing, and then all of a sudden I see Black Label Pro is no longer doing events. So what happened there? But first, I guess tell me about Mojo Rawley and Paragon, and then what happened with Black Label Pro.
Hype bros, hype. Dean Mutati, Mojo Rawley, has seemingly found a wonderful spot in the business as a powerful agent in pro wrestling. So Paragon Talent Group, they seem to be affiliated with a number of big names, Wheeling and Dealing and so on. And I don't know if it's a natural extension, but it made sense, would be to invest or acquire in a pro wrestling promotion. So about 5 months ago, there was an announcement from Mojo. Paragon Talent Group was in attendance for our first show as co-owners of Black Label Pro, and it was a massive success, featuring Ziggler, Elias, and Zack Ryder. The show was a case study delivered for Paragon sponsorship opportunities. Arbo's Cheese Dip and Andrew Abergast were the title sponsors. Not only was the Arbo's logo printed on the turnbuckle, ring skirts in the ring, but our main event, Royal Rumble, was named the Arbo's Big Cheese Championship, with a custom wrestling belt delivered to the winner by the owner himself in the ring. As if that was not enough, we even had our talent using cheese dip in their matches as a weapon. I remember Catalyst Wrestling had a match sponsored by like a spicy chip. So whatever works, right? As a weapon for thousands watching attendance and streaming from home, check out these awesome photos. There's Mojo's email. I'm not going to announce it on here. It's not a secret, but I'd love to have him on the show. So,
Yeah.
So let me save that for later to see how we can create custom sponsorship opportunities for you and your company. Okay, so that made sense. Black Label Pro was really one of those breakthrough, not the biggest independent promotions, but one that whenever they did something, it would get a lot of buzz and positive feedback. So you think Mojo Rawley investing in it, more spotlight, more access to opportunities, even better. But then on October 1st, unfortunately, we have decided to cancel Fantasy Wrestling and the rest of the events upcoming. We are going on hiatus for the time being. This is Black Label Pro announcing. All tickets have already been submitted for refunds. Thank you for your support. So we don't, I haven't seen what happened, but, that was surprising because it seemed like a potential win-win, but maybe the stakes just got higher, right? If you're flying in more talent and so on, then you have to do better and has to make sense, financially.
Yeah, damn. It sucks for BLP there. What's going on with GCW, though, on the other hand, because they've got a ton of shows coming up.
So we've seen GCW benefit from working with partners in terms of going into their territories. And Brett explaining on his last appearance that, they're very careful. They always ask, and sometimes they always ask if they're doing it independently, but sometimes it's a collaboration. So here we see some big promotions coming in to our side of the world. Brooklyn, Friday, November 29th, there's a double shot in the afternoon at their Roulette Intermedium, 3 p.m. on a Friday. Defy and Progress. This is Thanksgiving weekend, right? November 29th. And then GCW in the evening. And then December 1st, Thalia Hall, same setup, Defy and Progress in the afternoon, and GCW. So that just seems like a win-win. So just quickly, and like you mentioned, John, going through the setup here. So in your neck of the woods here, they're back to Atlantic City. This weekend is recording it, the Art of War Games and Fight Club. The ticket sales looked really slow the last time that I looked. So maybe just running too much of the market, and especially when the weather isn't great. Golden, Colorado on October 18th. LA, which has a sellout streak, October 19th. We'll see if that continues. National City, California, the Monster Bash on October 31st. Hawaii Mania, November 2nd. Louisville, November 14th. Sauget, November 15th. NGI on November 16th. The most successful looking show thus far in terms of interest in ticket sales moved is the show at the American Dreams Mall, November 23rd. Awesome. It looked like most of those reserve tickets were gone. We had some available in the balcony. Then Bloodsport in Jersey City the following day. New York, the aforementioned show on November 29th. Chicago, like we talked about. Okay, so I wasn't even thinking about that those are right after the other. So if you're flying down, that makes a lot of sense there to just go from one to the other. I mean, even though New York to Chicago isn't very close, but not as far back as going back to the West Coast, of course. December 6th, Tampa. I mean, everything should be well settled back by that point. December 7th, Atlanta. The 13th, Phoenix. So back to LA already on the books again for a follow-up show. December 14th, Seattle at the 28th. And then back to Rochester on January 10th. So
obviously they got a lot of stuff coming up. And then MLW's got some shows coming up, but not only that, they've got a figure deal coming up. Very cool for MLW.
So, of course, they had some disruption, as many did, in their planned Florida taping. There's nothing rescheduled there, so they'll have to go with some classic content or figure something else out. But they have a monthly rhythm, which makes sense. November 9th in Chicago, Lucha Apocalypto. New York, December 5th in Queens, and January 13th in Dallas. Now, just a little bit going back with their figure deal, right? They had a figure deal previously. I think, what's that, Toy Figures Inc? I'm not sure, but unfortunately, I think 3 of the 4 talents were already gone by the time the figures came out. However, one of them was Jacob Fatu, so that having that first figure for him probably carries even further. Now, Powertown Toys, which is doing a lot of cool things, I didn't know that they had the Galoob brand, so that's like nostalgic as well. So, so this is like a niche product, but it's always fun to see. Today announced an agreement with iconic action figure company Powertown to produce an exclusive line of MLW action figures under the revitalized Galoob brand. The multi-year deal will celebrate the popular original Galoob line from the 90s and feature the same iconic style posed action figures that many MLW fans grew up on. I still have the Steiner brother ones like in a drawer. Those held up well.
Nice.
Yeah, like the the plastic ones, like I would, like really bend them, and sometimes like the metal would come out, but the hard plastic, right, the bendable, but the hard plastic ones stayed up well. Now the iconic style of figures will return, featuring a whole generation of fighters from MLW. MLW is expecting the new action figure line to be available on sale in 2025 and will be the biggest offering of MLW's roster action figures ever. So that should be interesting. I wonder who they'll use. I guess it just depends on who's part of the company at that time. But hopefully the window from creating the mold and getting it out there will correspond with the talent still being there too.
So as far as Triller is concerned, what is the latest going on with Triller?
So first of all, Bleacher Report, when announced that it was taking a step back from AEW pay-per-views, it pointed people towards Triller in terms of getting their archival content within a certain number of days. So that's a nice migration. However, I believe that the deal with Max is that AEW has to prioritize its promotion of pay-per-views to Max. So things can still be on Triller, but like you can't promote it. I'm not sure, like maybe only if you go to Triller can they say they're doing AEW, but like other things won't feature it. So that'll be interesting to see, because ppv.com is also running promotions for AEW at the moment. So we'll see that become more limited with the Max deal, from my understanding as well. In sort of like bigger, more overarching news, there's always a lot of talk with the merger. The stock is up about 30%, 26% as of the last time I checked this, the day we're recording this. But it bumps all around, so it's kind of fun to follow and have a little bit of skin in the game as a shareholder, but I knew not to risk too much. HEBA and Triller announced that their merger is expected to close on Monday, October 14th. So that's interesting. I'm not sure, is the stock market open on Columbus Day? But anyway, HEBA, a multi-channel business platform delivering first-class financial services through machine learning, and Triller, a next-generation AI-powered social media and live streaming event platform, announced that all steps have been finalized to move towards the completion of their merger. The merger represents the next step in a collective strategic vision of the digital economy. The combination will accelerate innovation, clear a path towards rapid growth, and expand the combined company's market presence globally, creating unparalleled value for all shareholders. Backed by a stable shareholder base of world-renowned investors, a distinguished board, and a strong leadership team, there's a unique opportunity to grow and take to the next level an exciting range of businesses, such as Triller Social Media, which is poised for fast growth, Bare Knuckle, the world's fastest growing Comment League, Triller TV, which streams more than 3,000 live events annually to households, across the globe, and a suite of innovative AI and SaaS tools that are already used by top creators and global brands across all major social media platforms. The completion of the merger process will include a reverse AGBA stock split to remain in compliance with NASDAQ rules in connection with the merger. So we'll have to see if that comes through and what the effect is on Wall Street, as well as just solidifying the business.
All right. Sorry about that, Lavie. What else did you want to discuss today? What else did you want to
Okay.
talk about?
So for the second time, I've discovered WoW's salary rates.
Yeah, that was
I,
interesting. I was looking at that. Very interesting.
yeah, and I think it's pretty consistent with last year's. So they advertise on Backstage. So prior to the last 2 years of tapings, they listed like what they're looking for. This would be, I think, applicable for new talent. I think talent that they've worked with or experienced talent may be getting a better rate, of course. Seeking talent for Own the Spotlight, a show production states, lights, camera, superpowers. Wow, the action-packed weekly wrestling superhero show airing across 100% of the U.S. markets, also on Pluto, Vice, and Amazon. Seeks phenomenal women to headline our fearless team of WoW superheroes. No capes needed, just raw talent and charisma to ignite the screen. We welcome all backgrounds and body types, united by passion for storytelling and pushing boundaries. No prior experience, no problem. WoW provides comprehensive training in LA, led by industry experts, transforming you into a real-life action hero. So this occurred on May 1st. Shoots fall 2024 in LA, which it did. So the rate this is for 4 months. So from May, June, July, or thereabouts. Maybe they sort of a week off here and there. So 4 months, so that include both the training and the taping. So for those who are in training, I guess you just get paid for the taping. So $4,000 to $6,000 a month. So $16,000 to $24,000 for an estimated 4 months of work, plus merchandise and royalties. So that's not bad for for somebody just starting out in the business. You get a national platform and a pretty good rate.
It's a pretty good amount of money there.
Yeah, it's just interesting that for the
No
most part,
experience. For no
no
experience.
experience. But the talent don't seem to like migrate too far. Like if you're already experienced and you pass through WoW, but we haven't seen a lot of like WoW talent migrate outside of WoW to AEW. Certainly, I think to Japan you probably have to be retrained. To WWE, I think there's like a few like one-off examples of that throughout the years, but it seems to be like a self-contained experience. We'll see with the Tonga, were the Tonga twins, that to see what ends up happening with them. It looked like they were visiting the performance center. And sorry if I'm messing up their on-screen tag team name.
Yeah, crazy. You get no experience, but interesting there. But what is going on with Sakyapan?
So just wanted to note, in terms of your call, which should be interesting because that venue's capacity is known, to see like if they end up announcing like a really large number to compare it to the venue capacity. But as of the day of the taping, there was a number of GA tickets still remaining. So that's just why I wanted to note it, because like following their shows, they seem to announce high numbers, which maybe it's for PR purposes, but they seem kind of high for what it is. I know when I went to New York, that venue was completely full, so they might be tapping into something as yet unknown. And they certainly are trying to do that to a different audience, sort of like a very she fashion and anime, fashion and anime audiences. I don't know how much those cross over, but they're trying to do something different. So let's see what happens with this show. But their profile still in the US is fairly low.
Now, one thing I wanted to ask you, is AEW going to be profitable? What do you think with the deal coming up? It seems like yes, but what do you think?
So it's certainly a high rate, but we have to factor in a number of things. The first time when it seemed like they would be profitable, we heard that they'd be profitable if not for the video game division. So it doesn't seem like they're investing a lot into the video game division. It
Good.
hasn't gone
Shouldn't.
as well as expected, but they have a number of talents, on the roster, some which would seem pretty expensive, like Mercedes Monet, and it just seems bloated in that way. They continue to book venues. I don't want to belabor this, but continue to book venues where at this point, sometimes they're like 10% full. So maybe
Yeah.
15%.
Yep. Yep.
So you have these built-in costs. Unless we see those numbers, I think it's hard to predict. I would say, if I was going to give an educated guess, I would say yes, that they will be profitable at these rates, but they could be more profitable if they were a little bit tighter in terms of what they're doing. Obviously, I think it is being treated like a business, even more so than the NWA. I don't think it's something where Tony Khan doesn't care. He's very passionate about it. He's dedicated his life to this and a number of his other businesses, seemingly. So he wants it to make money. It's not like it doesn't matter to him. So I think it will be profitable. They'll figure out a way to keep it profitable if it hasn't been, or to make it profitable. But I think there's a lot of money going out the door too, which doesn't need to be.
Yeah. It just seems like, man, cut here, cut there. I mean, we're not there. We're not running the show, but it just seems like certain things should be cut. Certain wrestlers should be cut that you're not using. That you're traveling to the town. Just there are ways for sure that it could be, especially with a great deal, great TV deal like that. I know they probably had to give up 10% to Warner Brothers Discovery is kind of the rumor, but still, seems like a pretty damn good deal.
Yeah, and if you're willing to use that amount of money or have that many bottom line costs, maybe there's a way of being more effective in doing so. Spend more money on production. It just seems, and I haven't watched a lot of it now. You're in these huge venues and you're keeping it dark, so you may as well be anywhere, that sort
Yep.
of thing. Or
Yep.
you lost some great talent. I mean, you don't want them there just because of the money, if they're not motivated or they're not happy. But look at the talent that's migrating out, and especially at the highest levels of WWE right now. Instead of having 50 talents you're not using at the bottom, can you use that to secure your top talents? The fact that Daniel Garcia is remaining is a big thing, but they're also missing out on some great talent that were names that really grew with them, at least on the national stage, but that don't seem to make it to TV every week. Or maybe they've said things or been immature at certain points, and they don't seem to be able to get out of that hole, and they could be contributing a lot, but they're not.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's an interesting time in the business for them, but it just seems like it was all leading to this deal. Everything's come up to this deal. Let's turn the corner here and let's hit the right venues. You know what I mean? You got to hit on all cylinders here. Let's go to the right spots. Let's book the right talents, book the right angles. It just feels like, wow, now we're going to this gigantic arena and it's completely dark. And then you get these people posting pictures, making fun. It's just a lot of negativity about running the wrong arenas. It feels like you're overspending for no reason.
I think AEW's challenge was, and I wrote about this maybe right before it started, when they've had just a pay-per-view or whatever. It was everyone wanted to be everything to them, and there's a lot of different flavors. That some of them wanted to be the ultimate super indie and cutting edge and high flying. Other people wanted to be nostalgia or old school, or US's New Japan, sort of an American based New Japan type of company, strong style, but or a top level competitor to WWE. It's hard to satisfy all of those things, and then when the wheels started falling off a little bit with backstage issues, with Cody Rhodes leaving, with CM Punk's issues, with arena struggles, then like it just started like pointing downhill, and then like certain reporters like Alfred at Forbes just like taking so much joy, seemingly, at least, I think he's a comedian too, so maybe it's a little bit
Yeah.
tongue in cheek, but
Yes.
like on X, seeming to like enjoy their struggles too. That you have that negative perception, whereas like WWE like started ascending, just for the time. I think like there's very few moments where you'll have like that crossover where people are just happy with what it is. Generally, like maybe like WWF and WCW in like late 1997, early 1998, where everything seems to be going well on both
Mm.
sides. But like, it seems like for most people, there has to be like a winner and a loser.
Unfortunately, yeah, the tribalism is nuts now with pro wrestling. There's kind of no doubt about it. It's been absolutely nuts. Like I said, I've seen the sickos firsthand. I mean, obviously, I've seen some nutty WWE fans too, which were going crazy about the bad Dynamite rating on Tuesday night versus NXT head to head. People, I mean, too much joy with that one.
Yeah. Like, and I came across the sickos thing sort of like with New Japan once, or I've mentioned on the show. Like, I just made a joke about like Enochiism, and like it seemed to set people off. And like first, I was like hiding tweets for hours, and then finally I had to delete it. Like, it was just like ridiculous, and that was like a tiny taste of it. But I think ultimately it comes down to like people's values and their lives, and like I'm not going to say like the mom's basement thing, but like when I was 17 and didn't have anything going on, like I could be like super ready to argue about wrestling or sports or whatever it
Yeah.
is. But like
Yep.
when you have a family and a job and responsibilities and so on, you can still like find your passion for this, but like it doesn't seem to be like the focus of life. And for some
Yep.
people, that's the stage that they're in, or some other people, that's the stage that they'll never be outside of. So it's good that they have those interests. It helps people, like if they have like mental health challenges and so on, to like have something to look forward to. But sometimes people just get so into it, like in a scary degree. Like one thing that was like upsetting to me, but she was just responding to it and managing it. Like Maria Kanellis is like managing her career now. She's also managing, I believe, some health concerns that she's been sharing over X. And like somebody is like sort of like shading her and like tagging her like that she's always out for pregnancy or illness, or she has complaints about the company, and like she feels the need to respond. And like that was like upsetting to me. Somebody that's so accomplished in the business and really held like publicly, right? Like she held her family together, and she has a wonderful family, and she's still relevant in the business, and she has to deal with this like crap basically.
Yeah, it's crazy. They don't respond to these nuts. Yeah, for sure. But let's wrap this a bad boy up and hit the plugs. You follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip Lavie. What about you?
Follow me on X, Lavie, LAVIEMARG. Check out my long form articles on linecubjobsearch.com. Join us in the LinkedIn group, The Business of the Business. We're still a couple away from 100. And for those celebrating, happy Jewish New Year. I hope it's a good fast and a pleasant October.
Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. See you right back here next week for the business